Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jeff Duncan alongside Chris Dabe, and we are live from our warehouse district studios at NOLA.com, right in the heart of Mardi Gras season and right at the beginning of the Saints 2019 season, as they are up right now at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Got a lot to talk about today. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions out there, so when you get a chance, fire them away, and we'll get to them as best we can, Chris and I. But this is a busy time for us, even though it's the middle of Mardi Gras season and we're stuffing ourselves with king cakes. We have to turn our attention to the offseason here. The Pelicans are still going strong. LSU basketball, we're in the heart of basketball season. Baseball season, college-wise, has started up. But everybody in the football world is in the offseason, and the Saints are turning their attention to the 2019 draft. They're at the Combine along with every other NFL team. And we have our own colleagues up there, Josh Katzenstein and Luke Johnson, monitoring the daily activities of the New Orleans Saints. They're going to try and get a sit-down at some point with Sean Payton. But the big news that came out of there this week, Chris, was the reports of the competition committee having a meeting, and basically the feeling is there's going to be no momentum right now to change the replay system as we have it. I think that's very disappointing to Saints fans. It's probably disappointing to a lot of NFL fans who'd like to see this inadequate system improved, but it sounds like there's really not a lot of momentum in that direction for the Saints and NFL fans to get this thing changed.
Yeah, and in some ways, I feel like it's not overly surprising that you could go through the whole offseason and not really have any kind of major change to the replay system or anything like that, or what gets reviewed, because you also have to consider the unintended consequences. If you're going to start reviewing penalties, if you're going to review pass interference calls, how will that impact the game? Or are you going to start reviewing penalties that don't get called? And in this case, that's what this is. It was a penalty that didn't get called. And so if that's going to become a part of the replay process or system or whatever, well, then you're going to start looking at holding calls and other such penalties. And it's like they say that there's a hold on just about every play, or there are various types of penalties that will occur on any kind of play. Or you're going to start getting defensive holding on the other side of the play that had nothing to do with where the ball was going, and those sorts of things. And so I would imagine there's a lot of concern about opening up that and then completely really altering how games are played and how things are reviewed. In some ways, that would be almost worse than like the catch-no-catch thing. That was a problem in NFL games before this past season. They really seemed to take care of that, and that was great to see. I can't think of any instances this past year where there was a big catch-no-catch debate like there were seemingly in just about every game before the 2018 season. Yeah,
I think the unintended consequences is the catchphrase of the offseason. We hear that a lot from NFL executives about this replay system called to be overhauled. I think it's a bunch of BS. I mean, I think you can definitely wade in there and start something that's better than what we have right now. I'm writing a column about this. It'll appear this weekend on NOLA.com and in the Times-Picayune about it. And I think what's been lost in all this, and I know Saints fans aren't going to want to hear this, I understand it, but what's lost in this are the officials themselves. I mean, I think we need to give them some help. And I think a new replay system, however we improve it, to help the men on the field. Gary Cavaletto is the guy that missed the call in the Saints-Rams game. I'm sure he's had incredible reaction to that. He's going to have to live with that call for the rest of his life. He's an accomplished official. He's been in the game for 20 years, 3 decades at some level of officiating. He's one of the best in the league, and he blew a call. But the game has changed. We're asking these officials to make split-second decisions. I know that's what they get paid to do, but it's human error. Mistakes are going to be made. And if we had someone maybe in the booth upstairs, another official that had a better angle, it would prevent Gary Cavaletto from having to live with this the rest of his life. And right now, as good as his officiating career has been, it's going to be marred by this one call. And it's not fair to him. And I believe that's kind of lost in this whole controversy because we want to demonize the official when everybody's making mistakes at their job.
Yeah, and that'll be a thing next season. I'm sure every Saints game, Tuesday or Wednesday, when we learn what the officiating crew is, there's going to be a check every week. Who's the officiating crew for this game coming up? And a little bit more, I don't know if scrutiny is the right word, but if Bill Vinovich's crew, say, and even though I know in the postseason it's kind of an all-star mix-up, but if Bill Vinovich's crew gets a Saints game, well, that's going to be a major story for the week. So that's going to be, it's like you talk about the official kind of, it really kind of changes the image of his career and how he's able to call games.
Yeah, this guy's a Hall of Fame athlete, former three-sport athlete. I'm not defending him for missing the call, but it happens. And I think the way games are officiated now, it's much more difficult. The game's played at a much higher speed, and it's difficult. I think what's lost, no one's heard from Gary Cavaletto. The NFL will not allow us to interview these officials. I'd love to talk to him and hear his explanation for it. I think he's probably got a reasonable explanation. He didn't mean to miss the call. I'm sure he looked back at it and realized he missed it. But it would be nice to hear from him and how maybe some of these officials would look for some help as well in the replay process. Clearly, it's inadequate right now. We need something to improve upon. Some of these other football leagues already have better replay systems than the NFL. The NFL moves sometimes at a glacial pace on these kind of things. So it wouldn't surprise me if once they met in March at the NFL owners meetings, the competition committee, if we got more talk, more conjecture, more discussion, but no action. And that's just the way the NFL's worked for years. For whatever reason, they move slowly and they let everybody else trial and error the process, and then they get around to adopting the rule change years after everyone else has already done it. But let's go to the questions. I know that you're going to ask questions, but we got one question.
Yeah, we got one in the queue here. It says here from Christopher Farley. With the NFL draft less than 2 months away, who should the black and gold get? I know they need at least another wide receiver and a tight end. That is all I know. Those two do seem to be areas where fans would like to see the Saints pick up somebody, particularly at tight end.
Yeah, tight end I think is the key target in the second round because there's good depth in this draft at the tight end position. Not so much at wide receiver. This is not a good receiver draft. Now, the good thing for the Saints is they don't need a number one wide receiver. They've got one right now in Mike Thomas. They're looking for a number two, I think. Ted Ginn Jr. is getting up there in age. He's been hurt the last couple of years. I think they'd like to upgrade and find a future number two receiver to pair with Mike Thomas. So you can find one of those. The Saints have done that in the past in lower rounds. The problem is they really don't have anything after the second round. They're really strapped for draft assets this year. They just don't have very many picks. I think the second round pick is going to be the best player on the board for them, and they would hope it would be a tight end. But having said that, Josh Katzenstein and I talked about this last week. Asking a rookie tight end to come in and be your number one in this Saints offense is very difficult. That's one of the most complex positions in the Sean Payton offense. They basically have to learn the fullback position, they have to learn the tight end position, they even have to learn some of the wide receiver positions. It's a lot for a rookie to take on. That's why I think they'll probably try and address it in free agency, and then that way they don't have to rely on a rookie. They have Josh Hill there, clearly, but he's probably best served as a number two tight end. To get that number one, maybe they take him in the draft, but they go out and get a veteran guy that can come in and learn this system quickly, that's been in an NFL before, in an NFL offense. And you're not asking, think about it, when's the last rookie tight end in the NFL anywhere that's really come in and dominated? For the most part, those guys take a little while to learn that system. So that's what I think they'll do. I think they'll go tight end, but I think they'll also address that in free agency. Yeah,
and like you said, I think with the Saints only having, only having a second round pick in those first 4 rounds, this really is kind of the ultimate sort of best player available type thing. You're not going to see them get tempted to take anything based on need, and I don't think they really do. Even when they have a good first round spot, I don't feel like they're a team that really reaches based on need, like you might see some teams do.
Last year that was the only year I can think of they've done it.
And to do that, I mean, they made a trade. They felt like that play that Marcus Davenport was the player, of value at that at number spot, but really they've always seems like they've been a team that's it's just based on need. How often do they take an offensive lineman, whether it's Anders Pete or Ryan Ramczyk, and those picks kind of get panned by fans, and certainly the Ramczyk one turned out to be a great one. And so I think that the Saints have, the last few drafts have been pretty solid at just whatever's available, whatever they want. At that spot, they get the best player that they can.
Yeah, you just don't want to reach whenever you reach, and that's the Saints' philosophy. It's always been that way. They love to plug their holes in free agency, so they go into the draft with no holes to fill, and they can just take the best player that falls to them, and that's served them well over the years. This year, though, I think they have some acute holes they do need to fill. Tight end, and I think number 2 receiver. Other than that, I think they're pretty well set. I could see them going out and getting a veteran safety in free agency. Because they don't have Kurt Coleman, they released him recently. They got pretty much a young safety group right now. Von Bell, Marcus Williams. Sean Payton likes to have at least one veteran in each position group, a guy that's got some skins on the wall. They like to have experience there. They don't have that right now at safety. That was Kurt Coleman's role. That was Roman Harper's role before that. So I could see them going out. I know people have asked Tyrann Mathieu, is he a possibility? I think they would have genuine interest in him, but I don't think have quite the money to pay Tyrann Mathieu. Maybe they get him at a hometown discount. I know Houston wants him back. He liked it there. That could be a possibility, but someone like him, I think, could be brought in at a cost-efficient rate that would fit into that safety group. I don't think it's a huge priority. If they don't get that guy, I think they'll be just fine because I think Von Bell came on in his second year. But I think that's another area they could address.
We have another question here in the queue. What are the Saints doing in Indianapolis if they have so little to do in the actual draft? And that's a really good question. Josh Katzenstein did a great job providing an answer to that earlier this week in his pre-combine primer, and just kind of explaining that the Saints go up there, or their coaching staff, scouts, whoever, and they interview all these prospects, not entirely thinking that this is the guy that they're going to draft, but they're doing some future scouting of knowing that many of these players they're going to go up against. They want to know as much as they can. And then many of these players as well, they're going to become free agents at some point. Mm-hmm. So the sooner they can build these relationships, learn more about the player, all that stuff's going to be on file somewhere. And when a guy becomes a free agent and they want to look into him, well, then they have something that they can go back to and base some data on them.
Well, the best example of that I would give you is like Demario Davis. Demario Davis was not drafted by the Saints. He was drafted by the New York Jets. But the Saints had interviewed him back when he came out of college. They had a scouting report on him. And when he became a free agent, they went back and reviewed all the reports on him. They had thorough interviews with him that they called upon. They had great grades on him coming out of college. Obviously, they looked at the film of him at the Jets, but they had a background on him and a resume on him from their own scouts. So it's not just relying on other people's work. You've got to do that. You got to think down the road. The Patriots talked about Brandon Cooks when they traded for Brandon Cooks. They relied on their grades that they had, their interviews with him when he came out of Oregon State in college. They didn't just look at his tape from the Saints. They had to go on their own scouting. So you're always thinking down the road. You never know. I mean, Eli Apple was a guy the Saints had high grades on coming out. Same thing. So, yes, they're not just looking for this 2019 draft. They're looking down the road and thinking about player procurement is not just the draft. There's so many other ways, trades, free agency, that these players will be involved at some point in their careers.
We have another question here about Kyler Murray and his measurables, and actually had to look those up. Looks like he measured in at 5'10" and 1/8. Of course, they break it down to the eighth, 207 pounds, 9.5-inch hands, which I believe that does meet the standard requirement for being an NFL quarterback in terms of being able to handle.
What was his height?
5'10" and 1/8.
That's not bad. That's better than I thought he was going to measure. I thought he was going to be more like 5'9". Look, Drew Brees was just over 6 feet.
I believe so.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson, I think, is a little shorter than that. Those guys have, I think, opened the door for someone like Kyler Murray. I would love to know, the guy I always think of when I think of these shorter quarterbacks, athletic guys like Breeze and Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. I think about Charlie Ward. He was kind of the original guy, right? Won the Heisman Trophy at Florida State. Ended up having to go play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Had a pretty good NBA career. Was a great athlete. I wonder what Charlie Ward thinks these days. I mean, he basically, if he were around today, he would probably be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And he never really had an NFL career because the thinking back then was it was too close-minded for these kind of quarterbacks. But reading the stuff I've read about Kyler Murray, I think he gets in the right system with the right offensive staff that can take advantage of his ability. He's going to have a very productive NFL career. My concern with him is not his height or his athletic ability. My concern is the Oklahoma system has put out these kind of quarterbacks over the years, and not very many of them have been successful. Obviously, Baker Mayfield has, at least early on. But in the past, we've had guys like Jason White come out of there. I'm trying to think of some other ones. They get labeled a system quarterback. Whoever plays in that Oklahoma system is almost immediately a Heisman Trophy candidate because they put up incredible numbers. So I'm a little reserved about Murray just from that point of view.
Yeah, and Sam Bradford being another one from there. I think let's talk a little bit about the Saints coaching staff. They've had some changes on the staff, particularly with special teams. I think it was a bit of a surprise. I thought that the changes were being made, but I guess Mike Westhoff decided not to continue coaching. They decided they had to make some sort of change. I think he wanted Bradford Banta to continue to become the special teams coach, but then they went ahead and they brought in a guy from Miami to be the
Darren Rizzi.
Yeah,
and Darren Rizzi, I think, is the main reason that they made the change. I don't think they were necessarily unhappy with the special teams because they had arguably the best year they've ever had in the Sean Payton era. But Mike Westhoff was brought in because Bradford Banta was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit of an indictment on Brad Banta and his staff. And the fact that Westhoff was getting older, was kind of a part-time coach to some degree, part-time, full-time, if you will. I think Sean Payton said when Darren Rizzi became available, let's go out and get this guy. He's well thought of in the league circles. Was interviewed for the head coaching job with the Dolphins, and figured that Rizzi and his assistant, who they just hired, Phil Galliano from Penn State, that they could have two for the price of three, which is what they had before with three special teams coaches. There's no reason that they had to bring in Mike Westhoff when Brad Banta was special teams coordinator. He basically had two coordinators. So I think, I don't want to say it's a cost-saving move, but I think they respected Rizzi enough that they thought, here's a guy that will be just as good as what we've got, and we only have to fill two positions instead of having three. That's just my take on it. And that's what I've heard, so it makes sense.
Chavis' cousin has a question that I think just about every Saints fan is wondering, but what's going to happen with Mark Ingram? Of course, the running back. He was on the Rich Eisen show a couple weeks ago, maybe, and he made mention that they're in conversations. He is talking with the Saints about re-upping with them and staying. He's scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent, as many of us know, in March. And so there seems to be a desire on his end to stay in New Orleans. He's been here his entire career. As he's mentioned, his children were born here. I think there's some personal connections here. He has good rapport with Alvin Kamara. The two of them work well together. And, of course, he knows this offense. So there would certainly seem to be some mutual interest in keeping him around.
I think it's going to come down to Mark Ingram, Chavis. Does he want to stay here? He's going to get an offer, and he's going to have to make a personal decision because I think there's going to be some other interest in him in free agency. Does he want to stay here and take advantage of all the things Chris said? He knows the offense. They're going to be successful, I think, as a team. He has a chance maybe to win another Super Bowl. Well, not another, but he has a chance to win his first Super Bowl. And he will also go down, if he plays here next year, as the all-time rushing leader. I don't think there's any doubt about that. What value does all that have to him compared to the money, where he's probably going to make more money in the open market than he could make here? The Saints can't afford to pay him what some other teams could pay him to be the lead back for them. The Saints already have another dynamic running back in Kamara, but there's a lot of things that the Saints, I think, bring to the table that he's not going to get elsewhere. The things we mentioned, playing with Drew Brees, playing in a system he already knows, he's comfortable here, his family likes it here. I think it's a difficult decision he's got to make. He's going to turn 30 later in this season. Running backs usually drop off a cliff in their early 30s. I know there's not as much tread on the tire with him because of Kamara and the way they've used him in the past, but he's going to want to get paid because this is probably going to be it for him. He's probably not going to get a huge contract down the road. It's very unlikely. So he's got to weigh all those things, thinking about his family. He's got a young family. What's going to be best for them long term? I don't know the answer. Only Mark Ingram knows that. And
last time, I guess, when he coming off his rookie contract, he signed an extension before that expired, didn't he? So this is really his. If he makes it to unrestricted free agency, it's his only time that he's been able to take offers from other teams.
I tell you what, it wouldn't surprise me if they did some kind of Band-Aid deal, like a 1-year deal, and he said, look, I'll come back for 1 year, try and win a Super Bowl, and roll the dice that, get to the open market again next year. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Kind of what Ben Watson did a year ago. For more money, obviously. But something like that. I'm going to make 1 more year run, then maybe I'll go take the big money, if there is big money. I mean, that's the other thing. What's the value he's going to have when a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who certainly has more production than Mark Ingram, they're talking about him not maybe getting a big deal on the open market. Even as good as he's been and the numbers he's put up, the running back position is just not as valued as it used to be because it's a passing league and most teams feel like they can go get a running back in the draft. It's going to be much cheaper. So it'll be interesting to see what his market is.
You talked about safeties earlier, veteran safeties, maybe picking one up in free agency. We have a question from Josh Ross about Landon Collins, suggesting that he would be a perfect pickup for the Saints, to be in the role that they wanted for Kurt Coleman, who, of course, the Saints are planning to release. However, with the history of Eli Apple, do you think a different locker room would work for the two of them if the Saints went after him? And, of course, at one point, Landon Collins referred to Eli Apple as a cancer, and of course he had some issues there in the locker room within the Giants. What would be your thoughts as far as that goes? Could they work together in the Saints locker room?
That's a question that I don't know the answer to. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if he and Collins repaired everything, if they're okay. I don't know, but I know they played together after through that season. But I think there's more questions, pressing questions than that. One is, do the Giants want Landon Collins back? I mean, it still hasn't been determined whether they're going to franchise tag him or not. There's discussion. I know right now Dave Gettleman, the general manager, said he's unsure. So we'll know. I mean, he may be off the market, so we'd just be speculating. I'm not sure he's as good a fit as you think. Landon Collins is more of a traditional strong safety, I think. He's kind of a combo safety in a lot of ways, but he's definitely not a free safety, which is kind of what Kurt Coleman was, I think. And I'm not sure. And the other thing is he's going to cost a lot of money. I mean, this guy's a Pro Bowl caliber player. Do the Saints want to invest that much money in a third safety? They've already got 2 they like. I'm not sure that he is the fit roster-wise. I mean, I think he'd be a great asset to the team. But I think of all the priorities the Saints have going into this offseason, going and getting a dynamic safety like Landon Collins, who is a big-time player, at that position just doesn't seem like that great a need to me. I mean, you've already got Von Bell, who played well last year. Marcus Williams didn't play quite as well as he did his rookie year. You got 2 young players you like there. Landon Collins just seems like lagniappe at this point. So I'd be surprised if they got in that mix. But he is a New Orleanian. Obviously, he's from the city, so there are some things that make sense for them connection-wise, but there's a lot of things that have to be determined before he gets to the open market.
Well, no other questions right now in the queue, but I think one thing coming up this weekend with Mardi Gras that we're going to be seeing a lot of, and we've already seen a little bit of it, some of the throws related to the no call and some of the fun that people in the city are having with this, even as impassioned as people have been and feeling cheated about not going to the Super Bowl and whatnot. Certainly one thing that's unique about New Orleanians is a way to kind of make light of certain things
Right.
like this, and especially with at this time of year with Mardi Gras.
Well, do we expect anything different, right? I mean, as soon as that call was blown, as soon as we saw the controversy, I knew right away this was going to be a huge subject during Mardi Gras, because it was in the past with Bounty Gate.
Yeah.
Was the subject of numerous parade floats back in 2012, I think it was. And so there was no doubt that they were going to have field day with this. We've already seen it to some extent with some of the early parades. Crew de Vue, the unofficial Mardi Gras parade a couple weeks ago, made light of it. But today we saw even more. I will tell you, Friday night, Crew d'Etat, which is one of the historically famous satirical parades. You know, some of these parades in the crews, I should say, the crews don't get into political commentary or satire. Chaos, Crew d'Etat, and obviously Crew de Vue's unofficial, they've always been the political satire, political commentary. So you can bet you're going to see lots of creative, ingenious takes on the no call. I know a lot of crews are throwing yellow hanky flags as throws. There's a lot of cups, yellow theme cups with a lot of messages on them about the things. It's great. It's classic New Orleans irreverence. And like you said, making light of something that wasn't, I mean, it was very disappointing to New Orleans. But the late nature of it prevented everybody from going all in on it, because it's just difficult to get the floats made in time, in a short period of time. These floats have been worked on for months. But I know Friday night there's going to be at least one float entirely dedicated to the New Orleans no call in the Crew d'Etat. It's float 20. If you're out there, float 20 in Crew d'Etat. Should be fun stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Let's just hope we get good weather. We're talking about rain right now, right?
Yeah.
Intermittent rain throughout the Mardi Gras season.
Yeah, I was out at a parade last night with my 2-year-old and wife, and spent about an hour standing in the rain, but made it through, and parade kept going. Good times.
There's beads all over Magazine Street today, and that's the way it will be for the next 2 weeks. I love it. But no, it's part of the culture here. You're always going to have political commentary, and let's face it, there's nothing more no more lightning rod issue right now in New Orleans, probably, certainly in sports, than the NOLA no call. It's going to carry throughout this offseason.
Well, with that, I think we can maybe wrap this up. I know the no call will continue to be a part of the conversation, like you just said, throughout the off season. I think next time we talk, it will be after the combine. So I'm not sure what else will be coming out from there. But then,
you know, I'll be at the NFL owners meetings in Scottsdale. That's in late March. That is where the competition committee will meet formally, and any rules changes, any rule reviews, official rule changes will be determined at that meeting. What happened in Indianapolis was just let's get together and discuss what the real business is going to be next month. So there wasn't going to be any change in Indy. I mean, people are in Indy to be at the combine.
Yeah.
This is just, hey, we're all there together, let's have a meeting, and the formal business will happen at the owners' meetings. I still think there's a chance something could happen. We heard from John Harbaugh, the Ravens coach, yesterday. He was adamant that we need to change this thing. So maybe there's some momentum in the other direction. But Sean Payton's persuasive powers are going to be tested. He's one of 2 coaches on the 8-man committee, along with Mike Tomlin. Can he change some minds? Because right now, for everyone else I've heard on the committee, is against it. They, of course, didn't have something like this happen to their team. But it's going to be interesting. That'll be a huge subject from the owners' meetings in Scottsdale next month.
Yeah, and I remember Sean Payton went to the podium right after that NFC Championship loss, and one of the first things he said was trying to find a way to make it so that another team would not lose a game like this, certainly of that magnitude.
I think the key to everything is just everybody would benefit from it. The teams that lose, the fans at home, like I said, the officials that I think are kind of lost in all this. There's a lot of people that benefit here by improving it. I think we all just want to make sure we get the calls right without slowing the game down. I think there's a way to do it. It's been proven in the CFL, some of the other leagues. There's certainly no reason why the NFL can't do it.
All right, well, with that, thank you all for watching and listening. Jeff Duncan, I'm Chris Dabe, and until next time.